Hello, it's Kate Stillman, and welcome back to the Yoga Healer podcast. This month is all about Ayurveda, and it's a series that helps beginners understand a bit about Ayurveda and the doshas and the language and how to connect into yourself through the elements and the forces of nature. And it's also for people that are more advanced, just to have refreshers and reminders, and also to get my context in Ayurveda, because we know that learning through different people, we get different hits or different aspects of it. So in the past few episodes, we've covered what is Ayurveda. That's the first episode. And then the last two, what is Vata dosha, and what to do if you're a Vata, what to do, what not to do, what to avoid, what's going to get you in trouble. The next episode after that was the same on Pitta, and today we'll dive into Kapha. So just a quick refresher to connect with these forces of nature. And that's all we're talking about here is universal energy. So the big thing called the energy of the universe, right? How does that start to divide or separate or become forces that are differentiated, that have different ways of helping us experience life and more thrive and more balance? Or if we're going against certain forces, how does this actually generate dis-ease, discomfort, disease, and all of that which we don't really want to experience? So the more we understand universal energy as such, the more we understand the forces of the universe, the forces of the cosmos as they differentiate, the more control. Control is a funny loaded word, isn't it? The more control we have over what we experience. That's one way of saying it. For some of you who are not control freaks, you might say, I don't really want to have control. Maybe it's more you can design for what you want to experience next. So with Ayurveda, the science of life, this art of living, we have the ability to increase our awareness, right? This is part and parcel of the path of yoga. So yoga and Ayurveda are considered different sides of the same coin. Yoga is the path of enlightenment. Ayurveda is the path of thrive in body, mind, and spirit. So the more aware we are of how the universe works, of how the cosmos works, of how our bodies work, of how humans have evolved on the planet over time, around how to prevent disease, around not just preventing disease, but how to optimize your life, your habits, your diet, your sleep, your work, your parenting, your relationships, right? How to optimize all aspects of your life in alignment with what you want to experience, and you're actually designing the life you want. And that's, in many ways, to me, what Ayurveda is all about. It empowers you by understanding nature, your nature, the nature of your cells within your body, and nature outside of you in your ecosystem, in the sphere in which you live here on planet Earth, in this galaxy, right? We zoom way out. Right? Like, how does the big thing work? And what's my place in it? So the more we're able to tap into the laws of nature, the better we can design for what we want. The better we design for what we want, what actually starts to happen is a lot of energy becomes available to us. So we have a surplus of energy, we have resilience, but we also have divine guidance. And for those of you who that's a little too woo-woo, you could say the more you actually can sense your deeper purpose as it's arising now, however that may be. All right, so that's a long intro to Kapha Dosha. I just wanted to give you a little bit of context. Oh, and great news. Some of the episodes coming up, the one after this is going to be on what is the Ayurvedic diet. That should be entertaining from my perspective. And then the one after that is, can you lose weight with Ayurveda? I'll tell a lot of stories in that. And the way that we're organizing these shows right now, we're running this big experiment here at Yoga Healer. And the big experiment is looking at what people are actually searching for on the internet, and then answering that, me answering that from my perspective as Kate Stillman, as the head of Yoga Healer for almost 20 years, right? So what have I learned along the way in the hundreds of people that I've worked with, in the thousands of people that I've coached? And so looking at these perspectives and just letting you guys know, just like me shooting from the hip, I call it the chairlift podcast, right? I'm a big skier. And so it's like what I would talk about on the chairlift. If someone asked me one of these questions, that's how I'm forward facing into the SEOs of the show. But the big news is, you may have heard me in the past few podcasts say that I was going to do a history of Ayurveda interview with an expert. And we just got confirmation from Dr. Robert Svoboda that he's going to come on the show later this month and give us the history of Ayurveda. I didn't want to botch that one, because while I shoot from the hip, I really understand Ayurveda intrinsically. I'm not a history buff. All right, on to Kapha Dosha. So just feel in your mouth, feel the moisture. And for those of you who have a dry mouth, you can hear me, right? If you have a drier mouth, that means there's less Kapha Dosha in your body. There's less of that force. So Kapha is this force of nourishment. It comes from two Sanskrit roots. Ka means water. Fa means to flourish. And it's P-H-A, Kapha. Sometimes it kapha is how they might say it. So that which is flourished by water, I often think of a bog. If you think of a bog and then you think of a desert is more of the energy of vata. It's the energy of wind and dryness. Think of a sandstorm in a desert and you get a hit of vata. Think of a bog, a stagnant bog where it's just teeming with life. Like there's all sorts of squishy, slimy things in the water, like leeches and all sorts of little tadpoles that turn into frogs that jump around, and there's flies on the surface of the water, and there's kind of like this dust floating on the surface of the water, and that dust is really the decomposition of leaves, which the pond life is eating. So when you think pond life, you can think kapha and pond life. So it's this energy that enables growth. It's the energy that enables repair, right? So when we get injured or when we get sick, this is the force that helps put Humpty Dumpty back together again. It's the glue of consciousness that supports the generation of new life, of new cells. And so kapha is also our structure and stability. So it's the pond life, but it's also the mud at the bottom of the pond. It's the plants that are growing in the bottom of the pond and the sides of the pond. It's the structure. And so anywhere in the body that there's physical structure, which is all of your cells, it's all of your tissues, it's all of your organs, right? The physicality itself is kapha. So for those who are born with more kapha in their constitution, what we call prakriti, in their prakriti. So if you're born and you have more kapha, you have more body. Like you're physically a bigger person, and you have usually bigger eyes. You have bigger, like the large bone structure. Someone who says like, I'm big boned, that would be a kapha type of a thing. If you have like a big head or very square shoulders and square hips. So the shape of kapha is more endomorphic as opposed to vata's more ectomorphic, right? So vata, if you hug a vata type, which is the wind type, they're more bony on the outside, but a kapha is more squishy. Think pond life. There's more musculature and skelecature, whatever that word is. They're just larger, right? And so their shape is actually more square between their shoulders and their hips. Remember, Pitta's was more triangular with the tapered waist and the broader shoulders, and Vata's more tall and skinny with narrower shoulders and narrower hips, more of that rectangle. So the shape of kapha is more square. The energies of kapha, this energy of cohesion, of gathering, its attributes, right? Its adjectives that go with it, or the qualities, what we call gunas in Ayurveda, are that it's heavy and slow, cool, oily, liquid, slimy, dense, soft, static, meaning not moving, not mobile, sticky, cloudy, hard, that comes from earth element, and gross, which also comes from earth element, just that sheer physicality. So with kapha, you're thinking of the elements earth and water, water primarily, earth secondarily. So you have fluidity plus structure, you have fluidity plus containment. So now let's just talk a little bit more about the qualities of a person that has more Kapha Dosha, just like we did with the Vata and the Pitta in those episodes. So for Kapha types, in general, you're going to have just more physicality, more largeness. They might easily tend to be overweight, whereas Vata types can easily tend to be underweight. They're naturally rounder, plumper. Women are naturally curvier. I remember when I was in high school and going through puberty, I was like, oh my gosh, like my boobs got curvy, my hips got curvy, just like all of a sudden there was a lot more softness and plumpness in my face as I was moving into my mature body. And that's what it is for Kaphas. There's a softness to their features due to basically having more moisture in their body. So their eyes tend to be big and beautiful and calm. Their hips tend to be on the wider side, like the whole childbearing hips in women. That's usually more of a Kapha type of an attribute. Hair tends to be thick, often curly, often oily or wavy. Luxuriant hair like you see in the L'Oreal hair commercials. That's Kapha type hair. Lips tend to be big and juicy and smooth. Teeth are usually big and strong. Sometimes their noses are more short or rounded at the end. Their necks tend to be a little thicker on the thicker side. Chests tend to be big and expanded, both in men and women. So a Kapha man might have a much broader chest and broad shoulders, very strong shoulders, strong upper body. Kapha types have no problem putting on mass, right? Like mass is their friend. Just like Vata types have no problem being light, and Pitta types have no problem being focused. Like Kapha types have no problem taking up space and being quite grounded in that. The appetites of Kapha are slow but steady. When a Kapha type starts intermittent fasting, which is where you take like 16 hours of a fast time, 8 hours of a feed time or less. Even some Kaphas will go to instead of doing like a 16-8, they'll do like an 18-6. So 18 hours fast, 6 hours feeding time. So they might take a meal at 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. or noon and 6. They thrive. They absolutely thrive because their appetite, they burn really deep and they burn really slow. Whereas Vata and Pitta types are much more quick metabolizers. All right, so digestion in general, for Kapha, they can have trouble digesting heavier foods. That can really slow their digestion down. Their body very easily creates mucus. So if someone eats something and gets stuffy right away, that's a sign that either they are naturally more Kapha in their constitution and they're eating things that are aggravating their body, or that they're eating Kapha aggravating foods like mac and cheese with lots of cream in it. All right. So in general, their elimination is thick. They have the toilet clogger type elimination. So if you're more of a toilet clogger, then you might be more Kapha, at least in terms of your digestion and elimination. So in general, Kaphas are blessed with endurance. When my husband is Kapha, and it's fascinating spending time with him because he doesn't need to eat much, even though he's a big guy, and he's always been a big guy. He does, I will probably eat more calories a day than he will. And he can just charge up mountains. We used to do a lot of backcountry skiing before Indy came. And so we'd be skiing up mountains, right? You skin up the mountain, ski down the mountain. And we'd be doing this for hours and hours and hours. And he just doesn't crash. He can just keep going without food, without much water. And that's typical of a Kapha, that they can go long and slow in endurance related activities. He's a glazier and he works, he has his own business in town, and the guys that work with him are always like, oh my gosh, he doesn't stop to eat. He can just go and go and go. And his business manager is Vata Pitta body type, and pretty high on the Vata side of Vata. So he's a tall, lanky guy. And he figured out early on working with Winston that he had to be on his own schedule because he couldn't be on Winston's schedule because Winston can just go for 8 hours and work hard and not eat. And that's really kind of typical of kaphas, is they can go a long time and their awareness is steady and their energy is really steady. Where kaphas get into trouble is eating as much as other people are eating, or as frequently as their vata and pitta counterparts, which are much faster metabolizers. So emotionally, people like hanging out with kaphas because they're mellow, they're calm, they're reflective, they can listen. Like really listen. It's interesting when you think of water softens things. And in the emotional body, that availability, right? If someone is emotionally available to you, their ability to listen, and kaphas will often listen much more viscerally, right? Whereas like a pitta type will listen cognitively. They'll listen from their head. A kapha person will listen more in their body. And so they're actually able to absorb and reflect. Those are think about those words, absorption. Think of a sponge. A sponge absorbs what? Water. Think of reflection. Back in the day, before glass, when you wanted to see your reflection, what would you look in? Water, right? So water has these absorptive and reflective capacities innate in it. And this is why it's fun to hang out with kaphas, is because they're moving a little slower and they have this reflective energy and they're able to handle more. Their feathers are not ruffled easily. And so that's all on the good side. In terms, and I'll get a little bit into how kaphas go out of balance in just a moment. In general, their mental processing is slower, but it's precise. They have good recall. One of the functions of kapha is tarpaka kapha, which is the recall in the mind. They're able to recall memory. And so often kaphas will have a much better memory. Like when I hang out with my sister, who's a bit more kapha mentally than I am, I'm more on the pitta side mentally. She can remember, like I can be like, what were we doing when you were 8 and I was 6? And like, she'll just tell me, like she'll tell me what I was wearing, what I was thinking about. It's amazing because she was just absorbing experience and her awareness was imprinting, and she has that ability to recall. All right. So in general, kaphas will sleep deeply. One of the ways they can go out of balance is sleeping too much. In a lot of when I was first reading everything I could about Ayurveda, and I read somewhere in Maya Tawari's work about kaphas only needing 6 hours of sleep. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's funny how, those that can sleep long, like 12 hours, 10 hours, easily 9 hours, night after night after night, they only need to get 6 hours. Whereas those who are like having a hard time getting, 6 to 8 hours of sleep, those are the ones that usually want to be able to sleep less. And that's kind of how Ayurveda works, is the more we understand our nature and our tendencies that bring us out of balance, the better we're able to actually cultivate the opposite. All right, so in general, kapha with financial patterns, they're savers, they are accumulators in general. So someone that has been like holding on to the Tupperware for the last, like all the yogurt containers for the last like 5 years, right? That's more of a kapha type of a quality, of someone who just naturally saves, naturally gathers. Kaphas can be quite stingy, which is fascinating, right? They have the most to give away. Their spiritual practice should be giving away, should just be like serving others food, serving others from their abundance. That's what really keeps kapha in balance. Is like it keeps the energy from becoming a stagnant pond. It keeps it in flow. Kapha's work is to become a flowing river, to get that pond, to find the outlet, to like mix the energies up and to get things moving. Money-wise, they'll tend to save and save and save and save, and they might be quite thrifty. They don't like to spend. And energetically, they're not the first ones to jump up and volunteer to do something, right? They're more of like, I'll conserve. I'll see who else is going to jump up and do something, and I'll just hang out here on the couch and read my book or watch the screen or chill, right? And kaphas, that's where they go out of balance, right? So in terms of what happens with Kapha's out of balance. We'll go into that next. Now, this is the Vikruti side, Vikruti. So we talked about Prakruti, that's the constitution. And we're talking right now about a Kapha constitution, someone that innately has more Kapha than Pitta or Vata. And now we'll talk about when Kapha is out of balance. And I just want to be careful here because a lot of people with Vata and Pitta imbalances who get to the place of depletion often get confused and think they have a Kapha imbalance. And they don't. They have what I call a pranic crash, meaning they did too many things that were high prana activities or like high energy activities that brought them to depletion. So they took on too much and didn't get enough rejuvenation, and then they have no energy, and they're sluggish, and they're dull, and their digestion isn't as strong, and they feel lazy. That's not what we're talking about here when we talk about Kapha Vikruti. Kapha Vikruti, or when Kapha goes out of balance, it comes from not doing enough. It comes from not being as involved in the world. It comes from not being physical. So Kaphas have the most physicality, which means their endowment, if you will, these well-endowed body types, for them to thrive, they need to be in the world and of the world, and they need to move a lot of energy physically. Often Kaphas are more kinesthetically aware, meaning they're more body awareness people, whereas you have like audio, video, kinesthetic, right? So Kaphas are more kinesthetic. They're more of like the builders. They're more people that can actually build structures, whether that's, homes or roads or whatnot, just of the world, physical. Whereas Pittas and Vatas work more in the realm of ideas and concepts and art and people. So with this need to move energy physically, if a Kapha does not have a regular exercise regimen in the morning where they wake up and move their body, their energy will be more stagnant that day. It'll be much harder for them to get inspired to exercise later in the day or after work. And when they're in that sort of like cloudy, you got to think one of the qualities of Kapha in the mind is that it's cloudy. Well, think of a cloudy day, kind of a heavy, there's a little bit of moisture in the air, the clouds are weighing down. There's not this sense of like, I'm going to go conquer the world, right? It's more of where's the cat and the window seat, and let's grab a comfy blanket and take a snooze. So for the Kapha, they need to wake up early. They need to follow that inspiration of the dawning of a new day, and they need to exercise. This is crucial. For a Kapha to wake up, hydrate, eliminate, sit, and meditate, not as good. Not as good in my opinion, unless they're like super balanced and they're super enlightened and yada, yada. Otherwise, what's going to be much better is if they actually burn calories. If they generate heat. Heat generates sweat. Sweat evaporates moisture. And that is the best thing for a Kapha to do, like right off the bat. Then, like I already mentioned, the intermittent fasting. Eating twice a day. Using caffeine. Yes, it's good for Kaphas. They can handle it. They have such a robust constitution that they can actually handle the adrenaline hit that comes from caffeine. So I'm not saying they should just, like mainline espresso shots, but if they use caffeine in a way that actually helps the meal space, they'll have more steady energy throughout the day. They'll be more energetically available to others rather than like the bog. And they'll be much more interactive with people. So for the Kapha type, still, they often in our culture don't need to go to bed as early as other people, but they naturally want to. And I'm kind of like, if that's your vice, Kapha, like go for it. As long as you wake up and exercise, as long as you intermittent fast, you're going to be fine. You're going to be super happy. You're going to feel svelte in your body and strong because you naturally are strong. And as soon as you stop overeating and just kind of snacking, because the other constitutions can maybe get away with it more because they're fast metabolizers, the more you can actually just have water between meals. If you're a Kapha and you're trying to lose weight, the more you're actually sipping hot water between meals, the better. So one of the keywords that came up in our search was, how do you calm Kapha Dosha? And I kind of laughed at that. Just like I'll laugh at the Ayurvedic diet one that I'll get into the next episode. And the reason I laughed at how do you calm Kapha Dosha is like the problem with excess Kapha Dosha is it's too calm. So the question really is, if you're looking at like, how do you balance Kapha Dosha, that you should be asking like, how do you excite Kapha? How do you excite Kapha? And actually, in the process of cleansing in Ayurveda, what we try to do is we excite Kapha to get it out of the body. We excite it. We try to get it on the move. We try to get the mucus out of the body. We try to move it, heat it up, melt it, expel it. That's all in general what we're thinking about. How do you get the bog to turn into a stream, right? So just so you get a little bit of the essence of what I'm saying, you'll be able to notice that these energies, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, that they're in the different times of day. So that time of day, that's the end of the day. Think of after dinner as the sun's setting and your day's winding down, especially for those of you who feel the desire to relax, but maybe don't let yourself. What you want to start to do is let yourself, because that's the functionality of Kapha, of the rejuvenator. You want to think of Kapha as the rejuvenator, and it's dominant between 6 and 10 p.m. It's there so that you actually wind down, so that you can hit deep sleep, deep rejuvenation, deep rest, so that you can bring it down to zero, so that you can actually let go of stress, deep cellular stress, and then start the day anew the next day. Now, the energy when you wake up in the morning, if you're waking up before the dawn, the energy is the opposite of Kapha. It's clear, it's light, it's mobile, it's subtle, it's expansive. Those are the energies of Vata. And we want to wake up in that energy. That's the energy we want our day to have. We want clear thinking. We want subtle awareness. We want to be expansive in our personality. So just to clue into this, like everyone's in tune with these universal energies. Everyone's got all three doshas in every cell of their body, if that cell is functional and alive, right? So when we're talking about the doshas, we're talking about how the one universal energy differentiates into the three: the energy of movement, or Vata, the energy of dynamic transformation, or Pitta, and the energy of rejuvenation and healing, or the energy of Kapha. So when you think about this series on Vata and Pitta and Kapha, what you want to get a sense of is like, what is my constitution? So if you don't know, go to yogahealer.com/dosha, DOSHA, and take the quiz, and then listen to the tips in these 3 episodes. So if you come out more Vata, listen to the What is Vata episode. If you come out more Pitta, listen to that one. And really, you probably want to focus on the top 2. So you might be a Vata Pitta, or a Pitta Vata, or a Pitta Kapha, or a Kapha Pitta, or a Kapha Vata, or a Vata Kapha. Or you might be tridoshic, which is where it comes out pretty flat, that you have an equal amount of all 3, which is a little more unusual. All right. The other thing I'm going to point you to is the resources we have in my tip sheet. So I have how to thrive for Vata, how to thrive for Pitta, and how to thrive for Kapha. And those will also be in the show notes links here. They're under the tip sheets at the yogahealer.com website. In closing on this episode for the Kaphas of the world out there listening to the Yoga Healer podcast, the Dharma side, the purpose side of having a denser constitution, right? Of being blessed with abundance. Because that's really what Kapha is we're blessed with a physical abundance. Is the path, the spiritual path, is to give it away. And notice that it comes back. And give it away again in an even bigger way. And notice that it comes back. And give it away again. And that's the spanda. That's the pulsation that gets the pond to start to flow. right? So if you find yourself hoarding, I used to have, oh my gosh, true confessions. I used to have this tendency of saving things, so in kind of like parceling them out. So if like my friend Carrie, she gives me these incredible chocolate almonds from Todo Santos, a chocolatier in Santa Fe. And every year she gives me a bag. And in the past, I would like parcel them out. I would not allow myself I wouldn't share them with other people. So I would hoard them, right? And then I would like kind of like parcel them out for myself. So what I found over time is that like that's pathological for kapha. Instead, if I get something and it's really special, my practice is to give it away. So I got my box of chocolates in the mail the other day. Thank you, Carrie. And my mom stopped over that day and I was like, here, take some chocolates, right? And that's one of my checks to know that my kapha is in balance. If someone needs help, can I get off the couch and help them? Can I do something physical to help them? Can I serve? And this path of service really is the path of kapha. And it's different, the different doshas we have different paths that really help us thrive, that help us connect in community and experience a life that's beyond our wildest dreams. All right, I hope that's helpful. And if you want to study Ayurveda with me, now is the best time to enroll in the Living Ayurveda course, because you get to go through the Yogi Detox and you get to go through Body Thrive and get ready to really study Ayurveda with your habits in alignment and ready to go deep into a self-healer or family healer or pro-healer path. All right, for more on that, yogahealer.com/Ayurveda, Ayurveda. Namaste and have a great day.